Good evening, everybody. I want to say thank you from the Arizona region for attending. Tonight we are presenting Taylor Cook. She is a dietitian, which you'll find out the difference in just a second, I'm sure. But I just want to take a second and thank everybody for attending. This is a pretty important subject that doesn't get as much time with young athletes as it should. And Taylor has opted to spend the night with us and give us a lot of information. If you have a question or you need to ask something, there is a chat button and a question button both. Feel free to put your questions in there. And as we go through, as I get them, I will pull them up and we will address Taylor with it. But as of right now, I want to say welcome and thank you, Taylor, for giving us this information, and take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to present and talk with you. So I'm just gonna get right into it. So the importance of performance nutrition for volleyball players, presented by me, Taylor Cook, registered dietitian, licensed in some states, not all, but that's neither here nor there. So to introduce myself, I should have put this in a slide, but I grew up playing volleyball since around the age of 10. Played all throughout, elementary, junior high, and then really fell in love with it in high school once everything kind of got a little bit more competitive. I am from a smaller town that never really had the opportunity to play club, or else, I probably would have fallen in love with it a little bit sooner. But during my high school career, I was able to be a part of the state team, the state championship team. I'm from Missouri, so we won that in 2009, 2010. That year I was a sophomore, multiple district titles and appearances after that, conference championships. I was really lucky to be from a school that had a pretty strong volleyball program. I always knew I wanted to play at the next level. Did not really care about whether it was D1, D2, D3. I mean, everyone I think kind of wants to play D1, but throughout my kind of search to play, I was told I wasn't as tall as I needed to be. I'm about 5'8", and so kind of took the coach's word whenever I tried out at a school and they were transitioning to D2 that I wasn't tall enough to play for their outside. And so he pointed me in the direction of another NAIA school that was in their conference. And I went and tried out there, fell in love with the program, fell in love with the team. And so I ended up playing there for 4 years, Missouri Baptist University. I was part of a large freshman class, so we really got to work together for those 4 years, get to know each other. Our chemistry was great, and we really built the program, which I'm, looking back, I'm so thankful for, that we could all stick together and play together. My senior year, we ended up playing for the NAIA National Championship, and we lost in the finals. And so wasn't how we wanted it to end, but as far as my volleyball career goes, I'm super thankful and happy to look back on it and have all of the experiences that I had. It wasn't always the best of times for me in college, because that's kind of whenever I started to develop some disordered eating habits and behaviors, which we'll get into later, but didn't really understand the importance of nutrition for my performance, for just my overall health and well-being. So that's kind of when I decided wanted to work with athletes in the future. Didn't know what route I wanted to take until I learned what a dietitian is, what they do, and how they really are like the nutrition experts. So got a degree from Southeast Missouri State University in nutrition, and I did my internship through them as well. Passed my test during COVID, and so just kind of needed to get a job during that time. So I didn't get to go into the nutrition field, the sports nutrition field right away. Really my only avenue to get to work with volleyball players and work in that sport nutrition field was by creating my own business. So that's where we are today, and that's what we're going to talk about. So it's really important to understand what a dietitian is versus a nutritionist. We really truly are the only nutrition experts When we think about, maybe a strength and conditioning coach, or even a coach, a volleyball coach, parent, someone like that, they could have some nutrition knowledge, and maybe they've gotten, a certificate or something in nutrition, but that doesn't cover, the vast knowledge that registered dietitians have from obtaining that Bachelor of Science in Nutrition, a 4-year degree. Now it's required that registered dietitians get a master's degree. And so while they're pursuing that master's degree, it kind of overlaps and intertwines in that internship. So we have to obtain 1,200 hours of supervised practice during that internship through clinical nutrition rotations, food service rotations, long-term care nursing home rotations, and then some like more elective fun ones, like the sports nutrition or entrepreneurship, things like that. Once we complete our internship, we take the RD exam. Hopefully we pass it the first time. It's pretty rigorous. I think it has like a 61% first time pass rating, just because it is so, like I said, the nutrition field is so advanced and vast. Once we are in RD, once we pass that exam, every 5 years, we have to complete 75 continuing education units to maintain our registration, because nutrition is relatively new. There's always new research coming out, new recommendations. That just helps us stay on top of, trends and new things that come out. And the most important thing with registered dietitians is we are trained, not all of us are trained, but we are trained to be at least aware of those warning signs of disordered eating and eating disorders. Whereas if you look at the nutritionist column, sometimes they may be encouraging those disordered eating behaviors or really focusing on weight loss for a patient or client that maybe weight loss is not, something that they need to be working on. So nutritionists, there's no mandated requirements. Anyone can call themselves a nutritionist. I have a 7-year-old niece, and if she wanted to say, I think I want to be a nutritionist today, or be called a nutritionist, she could certainly do that. They have little to no education. Like I said, they might take a certified class or get a certificate, a 6-week class, but what they're learning is just a drop in the bucket compared to what dietitians learn over the 4 years with the additional master's degree and the 1,200 hour internship. What is performance nutrition? So performance nutrition is a specialized branch of nutrition that studies food with relevance to athletics and provides evidence-based recommendations to impact and improve performance, training, and recovery abilities. To put it plainly, it's using food as a tool to help you perform your best, okay? There's so many aspects to the game of volleyball, right? From the outsider perspective, it might be, oh, they just serve, they pass, they set it, they hit. Maybe they dig it, maybe they get the point. But as you advance your skills and learn new strategies, you ultimately become a better player and your skills advance, right? So instead of going up to hit the ball as hard as you can, just swing it away every time you get set, the more you play and the more your skills advance, maybe you start tipping or rolling or using that block to gain the point. This can kind of be the same as nutrition. From the outsider looking in, you can maybe say nutrition is quote unquote good foods and bad foods. Eat this, don't eat this. But there's really so much more to it, and we'll kind of get into that the more that this presentation goes on. But good performance nutrition is really about eating enough food, the foundation, and then advancing on to more, nutrient timing, making sure we're eating this type of food before practice, during practice, these types of foods after to really enhance our recovery, knowing that maybe this food is a better choice at this time than this other food, not necessarily saying it's good or bad food, just knowing when the appropriate time to use that food in your fueling plan is. All right. So key points of performance nutrition, you're going to hear this a lot from me, and it's, yeah, I'm really going to sound like a broken record, but nutrition is so individualized. You really need to focus on each individual player's needs. It's very, black and white thinking to just say that all athletes need to eat this way, not this way, when really there's so much, nuance to it. So everyone on the team has their own specific needs when it comes to fueling for volleyball. A middle may have different fueling needs than someone that's all in the court at all times, like a libero, a setter, maybe the outside hitter plays all 6 rotations, because that middle is only playing 3 rotations and then they sit 3 rotations. And it's a lot of stop and start to how much energy they're putting out and how much energy they need available to them. So that's something that we need to focus on, as far as individual needs. Everyone's height, weight, age, genetics, metabolism, all of those things can also play an important role whenever we're talking about individual energy needs. Making sure that we're eating enough, again, fueling for peak performance and not choosing foods based on maybe the way we want to look, to maintain weight, to do other things. When we're an athlete, when we're an athlete, we have such high energy needs that each time that we choose to eat really needs to be for, with the intention of fueling for peak performance and not necessarily something that's going to have a different aesthetic body and weight. Pre-workout, during workout, and post-workout or recovery nutrition is another key performance and key point in performance nutrition. So at each of these stages, before workout, during workout, and post-workout, our body needs different nutrients. So pre-workout and during workout, we really want to be carbohydrate focused, and those need to be simple carbs, okay, easily absorbed for our bodies to use. Not a lot of protein, not a lot of fat, just because that can kind of slow down digestion. Once we're done with our game, practice, workout, that's when we want to shift into still focusing primarily on carbohydrates to refuel those energy stores that we might have used, but then also that protein to repair the muscles that we just kind of damaged whenever we were trying to work out and play and things like that. So a good kind of like ratio when we talk about recovery nutrition is carbs to protein ratio needs to be around 3 to 1. So if we take my weight, I'm around 180 pounds, divide that by 2, that gives us 90. That's a good kind of base to figure out how many grams of carbohydrates I would need after a workout to kind of refuel and replenish everything. So then if we do that 3 to 1 ratio, that's a good 30 grams of protein that I would need to then eat to try to recover and rebuild those muscles that we just used. One of the more underrated things that is often overlooked when it comes to performance nutrition is hydration, or thinking of hydration as only water and not thinking of replenishing those electrolytes that we lose during our sweat, sodium, potassium, magnesium, those types of things. It's a huge factor. Once we become even just a little bit dehydrated, 2% losing of our body weight, then our cognition is going to be impacted, our reaction time, we're going to feel a little bit more slow and sluggish. So hydration is definitely just as important as actual, nutrient timing and eating enough foods and calories for energy. How can an athlete benefit from performance nutrition? So performance boost, as discussed earlier, the right types and timing of food can do wonders for our athletic performance. If we're not eating enough, our tank isn't going to be full. Maybe we only eat enough to fill it up to halfway. That's not going to really give us what we're looking for when it comes to a volleyball match or practice and getting through that with proper energy levels. Just the same as, recovery nutrition that, maybe we practice all day or we have an all-day tournament, then that ending meal of the day, we really want to focus on getting enough carbs, protein, fat, those macronutrients to not only replace what we might have used, but to maybe overstock it a little bit so that the next day we're already maybe at a half a tank or 3/4 of a tank of our energy before we even eat breakfast, to get us to that 100. So nutrition can certainly help with making our energy levels where they need to be. Injury prevention, so high intensity exercise and training almost every day, or those multiple days in a row where we have those 2 or 3 day tournaments, can put a lot of strain on our body. If we're not giving our body everything it needs to function properly at baseline, let alone giving it what it needs to have adequate energy to play our sport, we might develop those pesky injuries like rolled ankles. Certainly don't want to wish this on anyone, but ACL tears, things like that just kind of take us out of the game for a little bit. Faster recovery, when you know what your body needs in that window of time that's recommended, this can decrease muscle soreness and impact your energy levels, like I talked about, to where we're starting off at a little bit higher energy the next day than if we didn't really prioritize our recovery nutrition very well. Long-term health, understanding how your body uses food as energy, and creating a healthy relationship with food and body image and things like that is going to take you so far in life. It's going to kind of give you the blinders to those diet culture messaging that we so often kind of see on social media and in the media and things. And can really have, like I said, just a huge impact on your long-term health. And lastly, cognition and reaction time. As we talked about, whenever we're thinking about a good volleyball player, they're able to read, they're able to react, they're able to, run down those balls that maybe were shanked or off a block or anything like that. Even like a split second of not having a great reaction time, that could be, mean missing that dig or missing that ability to get the ball back on your side of the court. And then cognition, making sure that we're aware of what's going on around us, and everything's kind of firing on all cylinders while we're in the game. Common problems of poor performance nutrition. So we've already talked about dehydration. Underfueling, this is something that a lot of athletes face, and it can kind of be on like a pendulum swing of they're so afraid of overfueling and eating too much that they kind of compensate by underfueling. Athletes have high energy needs compared to just the general population. This age specifically, they're trying to still grow and their body's still trying to develop. So on top of all of their energy needs that they need for that, they need even more to play the sport of volleyball. Underfueling can lead to that loss of menstrual cycle in girls that are of age to have one. When I was growing up, this happened to me. I kind of got brushed off, and my physician was like, well, you're really active, you're an athlete, you're pretty lean, it's just normal. As time's gone on, we've kind of realized that that's not necessarily normal and not something to just kind of be swept under the rug, brushed off. And if an athlete is losing their period, their menstrual cycle, it could be because they're just not eating enough. And that would definitely be something that a nutrition professional dietitian needs to step in and kind of educate and help them gain that back. Injuries, low energy, like I said, if we're not eating enough to even fill up half the tank, then how can we play volleyball and have the power and the endurance that it takes to get through a volleyball match? Restless and non-restorative sleep. So there's a lot of, and then I'll kind of tie this in with the depression and anxiety. There's a lot coming out that nutrition can impact our mental health. And I see a lot of like specific things being talked about, like magnesium, that kind of thing. And while we do want a very nutrient dense diet, whenever we're not eating enough at baseline, that's when our body can get a little bit of anxiousness, because it's wondering when it's going to be fed next, right? If we don't have that trust with our body doesn't trust us to know that like we're going to constantly be feeding it and giving it what it needs. It can kind of get in that anxious state, which then produces us to have not as great sleep as we need. And as we know, athletes need sleep. Sleep is part of the recovery process. And it can just really impact our overall health if we're not sleeping as well or as often as we should be. Decreased concentration, reduced power, which is so important for volleyball, right? Especially our hitters, jumping, hitting the ball, serving, anything like that. Muscle weakness, nutrient deficiencies, decreased endurance. So now I want to talk about disordered eating and eating disorders in athletes. So there's not a great definition for what disordered eating is. These are just those behaviors that are considered like not normal ways of eating or behaving when it comes to like maybe exercise. And they haven't yet progressed into an eating disorder, but as you see on the bottom, they certainly can be like on a spectrum. So on the left is intuitive eating. That's more of eating according to our hunger cues, more of a free way of eating, whereas eating disorders are actually a mental illness that needs a clinical diagnosis that can kind of form from those unchecked disordered eating patterns. A lot more rigidity, inflexible thinking, can kind of occur during that time, and overall just mental distress. So some characteristics of what disordered eating could look like: a distorted body image that could be, looking like you're in a funhouse mirror. Your body to the outside person looks quote unquote normal, looks okay, but to yourself, you might be overly critical, or just you don't have a good picture of what and representation of what your body actually does look like. Body shape or weight that is used as a primary measure of self-worth, my goodness, or thinking that that your weight directly impacts your health. So the skinnier you are, the healthier you are, but we just know that that's not always the case. You might have strict rules surrounding eating and exercise. You might be restricting many foods or eliminating food groups. So a couple of different instances that I see with athletes are obviously like limiting carbohydrates and eating a low carb, high protein diet. We definitely don't want to do that. Carbohydrates are our #1 energy source for our body. Our body likes to use that as fuel as opposed to protein. But also like gluten-free and dairy-free diets, a lot trendier than necessary, as far as someone might have celiac disease and they need to monitor their gluten and avoid it, because it physically does cause them harm or digestive distress. But a lot of athletes that say, oh, I don't eat gluten, it's not because they have that medical condition. It's more they've seen their favorite celebrity or an influencer or something, on social media that's like, oh, gluten is bad for you. So we just want to keep that in check and say, what's the intention behind, eliminating this food group or restricting this certain food? Unhealthy weight control behaviors like skipping meals, fasting, using diet pills, vomiting after eating, abusing laxatives, trying several different diets to lose weight, and kind of always being on like a diet cycle or yo-yo dieting. Over exercise with the purpose to burn calories or lose weight. This is something that I struggled with in college. I remember being like on the treadmill after workouts or practices, doing, extra. And my coach was always kind of giving me the thumbs up, like, oh, she's so dedicated, she works so hard, all of those things, when what was really going on was I was exercising to not gain weight. I was exercising as a form of punishment because I ate, let's say, cake or cookies or kind of something more heavy, and those, forbidden foods the night before. So if there's coaches, on this, and as parents, if we see like an over exercising or an athlete to do more, doing more than what we've kind of created in our own workouts and our own plans, we just want to keep an eye on that and really know that we shouldn't be encouraging that. We should be more questioning and curious about their intentions. Feelings of guilt and shame.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
How prevalent is eating disorders in volleyball as opposed to like other sports?
Yeah, that's a great question. So gymnasts, swimming, those types of sports that kind of put a more ice skating, more emphasis on like what your body looks like, tend to have more disordered eating and eating disorders. However, I think that, being in spandex running around on the court isn't exactly something that everyone wants to be doing and feels super confident in doing. So specifically to volleyball, I haven't seen a statistic on that. Everything that's kind of like shared and researched are those more wrestling. That's another one that kind of has a lot of, weight classes and things they have to hit. So specific to volleyball, that's to be determined. But it is something that, because of the uniforms that we have to wear and things like that, that certainly isn't something to be overlooked.
And another quick question, how prevalent is it in boys versus girls? Is it 90-10%? Is it 50-50? What is it?
Definitely more heavily predominant in girls, especially, this age group when they're kind of becoming more aware of their body and the way it looks. And, certain ages like puberty, we gain a little bit more weight, just normal, yet girls don't know that. And so they think that this is, not great, all of those things. And it's not something they're ever going to like grow through. This is not to say that boys and men can't experience eating disorders. I don't, again, know the exact ratio, but men and boys can certainly have those same kind of like societal and body pressures as far as like being lean, being muscular, that sort of thing.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and then athletes that have more of that impaired quality of life or preoccupation around food, exercise, and body image, people who are commenting on them, they're negative, or on their body, negatively, that's always like a red flag. I hate my hips, I hate my arms, why is my stomach so flabby, anything like that. Or I can't go to this because I have to exercise, outside of their already regimented workouts with the team and stuff. Or people bringing their own food to functions because they don't know of ingredients that have been used in something that's like at a team dinner, and they want to kind of be laser focused on what they're eating and what they're putting in their body. So those are all just kind of things to kind of keep an eye out for. So once those behaviors turn into eating disorders, the athlete needs a lot more resources and a lot more help in recovery. They'll need, a physician, they'll need a therapist, a dietitian, things to kind of really help the athlete in the overall realm. So eating disorders are a serious mental illness affecting athletes of all ages, genders, ethnicities, and backgrounds. Athletes with eating disorders use disordered eating behaviors as a way to cope with difficult feelings or situations. These behaviors can include limiting the amount of food eaten, eating very large quantities of food at once, getting rid of the food, like we talked about, making themselves sick, vomit, misusing laxatives, exercising excessively, or it can be a combination of all of these things. It's really important to know when disordered eating kind of goes into the full-blown eating disorder world. that it's not about the food itself that these athletes are struggling with, but it's about their feelings, and they've now made food or exercising a part of like a coping mechanism for them. An eating disorder is never the fault of the person that's experiencing it, and anyone who has an eating disorder deserves that recovery, deserves that care across the board with the physician, therapeutic help, registered dietitian help to kind of like give them the compassionate care that they need to recover. It's important to get a diagnosis so that way that the team kind of knows like the best approach, the way to help them. So these different types of eating disorders, they can all kind of overlap. Let's say an athlete's first struggling with anorexia nervosa, but then that can turn into binge eating disorder, that can then turn into bulimia. Like, it's not just one strict like clinical diagnosis, and that athlete's going to stay there forever. They do have the ability to kind of like switch and go fluidly through different kinds. So anorexia nervosa is a serious mental illness that can cause individuals to limit how much food they eat or drink. ARFID, or avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, is a condition characterized by the person avoiding certain foods or types of foods and having restricted intake in terms of the overall amount of food eaten. This might be kind of like characterized as picky eating. So it's not to say if you have a picky eater that they have ARFID. It's just something to kind of keep on the back burner. Binge eating disorder is a serious mental illness where people eat very large quantities of food without feeling like they're in control of what they're doing. And they kind of, in one sitting, they eat until they're just so uncomfortable. Bulimia nervosa is a serious mental illness where someone is caught in a cycle of eating those large quantities of food and then trying to compensate for their overeating by, like we talked about, vomiting, taking laxatives, diuretics, excessively exercising. Orthorexia, this isn't a classified eating disorder, but I think it will be soon, as we are seeing a lot of this, not only in athletes, but just kind of like people in general in the wellness community. So this is that unhealthy obsession with eating pure or clean foods, needing to know every ingredient in a food before you put it in your body, things like that. And then last is other specified feeding or eating disorder. So that's sometimes a person's symptoms don't exactly fit one box exactly, but they may have a couple of symptoms in each of these. And so again, they would need to have that clinical diagnosis. So I have created, or in the process of creating, an online course that you can take to really get a good picture of what athletes need when it comes to fueling for volleyball adequately, appropriately, and freely. So in those 12 weeks, we'll go through, those are like the 3 pillars, and each pillar has like a little bit of more in-depth explanation of what we'll be working on. So module 1, the basics of nutrition. This one, we learn about what calories are, why they're not, not something that should be feared. We learn about each of the macronutrients, carbs, protein, and fat, how our body uses them for energy. We talk about micronutrients, things like that. Module 2, are you eating enough? We'll go through and talk about hunger cues, ways to tell if you're eating enough, why it's important to be eating enough. In module 3, we'll calculate your energy needs through the exercises that I've created and the worksheets and resources, so that way you have a better understanding of your individual energy needs. Module 4, what are my fluid needs? Same thing, we'll go through and we'll talk about hydration and how to calculate and how you know if you're staying hydrated or not. The second pillar those next 4 modules are fueling appropriately. So this goes into supplements, how to know if my supplement is safe, why it's important that we are picking safe supplements to consume. Do I even need a supplement? What kind of foods are high in certain vitamins and minerals so that we maybe don't have to take that supplement? And just really understanding that we can get a lot of our micronutrients from foods. It's just incorporating those foods into our diet so that we just don't even need to worry about supplements. Module 6, we talk about macronutrient timing, which goes into that pre-workout, during workout, post-workout recovery stage, knowing which foods to choose when for best performance, and lists of foods that, you know, encompass those macronutrients. Module 7, we talk about travel nutrition. So it's something that kind of gets swept under the rug, I feel like, as well, especially if you are an organization that travels a lot. Flying can dehydrate you, making sure we're hydrating, packing snacks. Gut health is a big thing with travel nutrition. Sometimes we can have some GI distress whenever we're up in the air. So just covering all things like that. Module 8, we'll talk about what we need whenever we're playing in a tournament. So we go through breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, AM wave, PM wave, what they can kind of look like, really in depth. And then the last set of modules is fuel freely. So in those first 2 modules, there's a lot of science, a lot of numbers, a lot of like exactness. So this is just a good way to remember that there's a large spectrum as far as nutrition goes, that we need to remember that it's nuanced, right? We're not ever going to know the exact amounts that we need. All we know is the recommendations and getting as close to them as we can that makes you feel good and perform your best. So module 9, we talk about body image work, what that looks like. There's affirmations and exercises to kind of maybe not have 100% body positivity, but to get to a place of body acceptance, so where we're not focused on that 24/7. Module 10, we talk about diet culture in sports, what that looks like from peers, what that looks like on social media, parents, coaches, all of that stuff, and how it can really impact the athlete's performance and the foods that they're choosing. Module 11, we go deeper into disordered eating and eating disorders. And then module 12 kind of wraps it all up with the intuitive eating framework and HAES, which is health at every size. So intuitive eating is a set of 10 principles that kind of, and it was on that one of those first slides that I talked about, takes the pressure off of eating and gives you more trust within yourself and builds your confidence with your fueling choices as well as your body and confidence.
Taylor, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Can you dive in a little bit to module 10? The idea of, you had mentioned social media, you know, again, there's so much misinformation, miseducation out there. How can coaches, athletes, parents, how can they kind of sift through it and find what stuff is nonsense and what stuff could actually be helpful to them?
Yeah, so I mean, in an ideal world, you would only get your nutrition content from someone who has, you know, education in that field, whether that's, you know, dietitian would be great. Other healthcare professionals are kind of second best. Certainly don't need to be taking advice from an influencer or celebrity or anything like that. Even a professional athlete, you'd be surprised with how much I'm scrolling through on Instagram and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is just not correct content for these players to be consuming. So a big thing is, what is their message? How does that make you feel, right? So if you are having content, if you're consuming content from this creator and you are like so scared to eat a banana because you are afraid it has too much sugar in it or something like that, that's not a good person to be receiving this kind of information from. And secondly, are they trying to sell you something? If they are saying, you know, X, Y, and Z foods are so bad for you because they make you feel this way, but you want to feel this way, well, here's my supplement. or I recommend a supplement that I'm getting paid to endorse. So it's really about like those critical thinking aspects of, does this person truly know what they're talking about? Are they getting paid to endorse this? And are they creating a lot of fear when it comes to just eating foods and things?
Okay.
So the packages, it's all going to be the same content. It's all the same modules. You get all the same resources. It just kind of depends on your level of engagement with me. Okay. So you get the self-paced package. So that's for the athlete or parent who wants to go at their own pace and receive no additional insight from me other than what's provided in the modules. So they could do a module a day. They could do one module a month. You just kind of get all the information and you do with it what you will. The group coaching package, these are for the athletes and parents who kind of want a little bit more structure and additional guidance from me as they go through the modules. And to join a community of athletes and players who are also learning along with you. I was in a group coaching for business not too long ago, and the amount of just like joy that I got from like, oh my gosh, it's Tuesday night, like I get to see all of these other fellow entrepreneurs and we're kind of making progress in our business. So I really love that, like this coaching package, not only for, you know, more structure, more insights from me, but you get that little community that you're gonna talk to and have so much fun with for 12 weeks, and then after the package is done, after the group sessions are done. So we will meet openly for discussions on Zoom once a week and kind of go through the modules together, answer any questions, and then I'm available 24/7 through a platform called Slack. The one-to-one guidance package, that's for the athlete or parent who wants to go through the course individually with me, maybe not in that group setting, and wants to work a little bit more in depth with me. Same kind of structure, we're gonna meet via Zoom. You get that 24/7 access to me to answer any questions that might come up, but it's just me and you and your parent, me, you, and the athlete, and we go through things together. So there's multiple payment options for everything to fit your budget. If even those payment options don't work, please reach out to me because I want this resource to be available to every athlete who needs it. And if you sign up for group coaching, but you're not available to make that specific night and time, you will have access to the replay. So you can always hear the inputs from me, the discussions within the community, if you're not able to be there in person. Thank you so much for listening to me and giving me this opportunity to speak with you. I've really come to love the little volleyball community, volleyball nutrition community that I'm creating. So I'd love for you to join me. You can find me on Instagram at the Volleyball Dietitian, where I post, you know, more disordered eating disorder awareness posts and content, body image support, specifically sport nutrition related content. Certainly if, you know, the packages and the pricing for my course isn't something that's feasible for you right now, at least following me on Instagram, you will get some resources and content that'll be beneficial for you somehow. If you click the link in my bio on Instagram, you can download a free tournament fueling playbook. So that's about 16 pages of a little sneak peek of what that tournament fueling module is going to contain. We go into carbs, protein, fat, hydration, foods for each, you know, ways to hydrate, and then there's an AM fueling guide and a PM wave fueling guide that kind of gives you an idea of how to structure your day. Sign up for my email list in that link in my bio as well, so that you can just kind of stay up to date on resources, services that I'm providing. And then once the Foundations of Fueling course launches, which I'm hoping is February 16th, you can start enrolling in that so that we can work together. And then this last page, if you want to take a picture, those are all the QR codes for everything I just said.
Nice. Very cool. To those attendees, I have unlocked your microphone. You just have to go on and unmute yourself, and feel free to ask us a question out loud for the group to hear. While you're doing that, though, one of the questions I wanted to ask Taylor was, there are a lot of parents who don't either realize the importance of this or don't prioritize it when it comes to their athlete. What can parents that maybe just are listening tonight or just are going to watch this online, what can they do to start becoming a little bit more involved in their kids' nutrition as far as fueling for performance?
Yeah, I'm gonna say this, everything is, individualized, so it's kind of hard to say where an athlete's parent is and what they could do better, just like not knowing a situation, but just making sure that you are giving your kids carbohydrates. I know that that's something that's kind of feared online these days, and they don't want to give them maybe too much carbs or certain amount of carbs or certain types of carbs. But like I said, your athlete is expending a lot of energy, not only at practice, but also just with growing and developing. So while there's that fear of giving them too much or they're eating too in excess of that, it's really hard to truly meet an athlete's needs. Making sure that you're providing them snacks, meals, multiple times a day to try to get those energy needs met. And then focusing on hydration. You saw my water bottle, it's huge. But really this is a good amount of water to start with as far as hydration needs for athletes, to make sure that they are hydrated, not dehydrated, things like that.
In Arizona, and I think probably a lot of other places, when we go to a tournament, we have tournament camps, where all the parents and the kids sit when they're off or things like that.
Okay.
And everybody brings food. Everybody brings some sort of food. What would be some of the things that you would want put on that camp table? What would be some of the things that you think those kids could get something out of?
I love that because I have seen a lot of places that say no outside food allowed, and yet their options are like nachos or hot dogs or things like that for the athlete to fuel with. So if you're ever in a situation like that, I would certainly keep something in your car, in a cooler if possible, so that maybe you can sneak some things in. But as far as at your camps or places that allow you to bring food in, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are always good. You get those simple carbohydrates from the bread, also the jelly. The peanut butter might slow down digestion a little bit, but if it's out, within an hour of your playing time, that's still a pretty good snack choice. Things like pretzels, goldfish crackers, peanut butter crackers, that's going to be beneficial. Sports drinks, I know that there's a lot out there that says sports drinks have too much sugar in them, but it's there for a purpose, and making sure we're not buying the sugar-free kind. Those quick, simple sugars, those quick carbohydrates are good during matches to kind of refuel and replenish those, but also with those electrolytes and those fluids to replace those while we're playing. Beef jerky, non-perishable like protein items like that would always be good. Chocolate milk is a great one to have on hand, just because there is kind of like a window that we want to get good nutrition, recovery nutrition in after, games are done for the day. And it's kind of a quick window within around 30 minutes or so. So if everyone could just grab a chocolate milk or something of that nature prior to going to the hotel, showering, going out to dinner, that would just be a great resource for them too.
Nice. You brought up drinks and sports drinks before. We see a dangerous amount, I think, of Red Bull and Monsters and energy drinks in general.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit, and also probably the the coffee that the kids are putting away and all that stuff?
Yeah. So obviously coffee's fun to drink. The lattes, frappuccinos, those types of things, not the best choice before tournaments, during tournaments. Save those for like fun carbohydrates that you can refuel with after a tournament, to kind of top off those energy stores. There is no place, in my personal and professional opinion, for energy drinks, not necessarily only specific to this age, but even, college athletes, professional athletes. the thing with Red Bull and those energy drinks is they don't actually give your body energy unless it's a higher calorie drink, because the only way our body gets energy is from calories, from the macronutrients, protein, fat, carbohydrates. A lot of energy drinks are just supplement or stimulants, and so it makes you feel like you have a lot of energy, but it's not providing your body with true energy. So if you're feeling like you're needing a coffee midday, or you're needing a Red Bull or anything to give you a little pick-me-up, that might be a good indicator that you're not eating enough throughout the day to give your body actual good energy.
Okay. I want to encourage the attendees, if you have a question, again, just unmute yourself and ask it out loud. But I'm going to ask a couple more here. Taylor, as far as myths of nutrition go, I mean, holy cow, there's books and books and books of them. What are the ones that you hear the most in the volleyball world, and what is the right information?
Yeah, right now, seed oils and artificial dyes and colors and things like that are getting a really bad rep. When we think about those types of foods, we want to understand that we're probably not consuming enough of those throughout the day to really have a negative impact on our health. As far as like the dyes go, or the aspartame, that was one for a long time from diet sodas. A lot of those studies aren't performed on humans, right? They're performed on rats, which have significantly different, the dose makes the poison. So in a small little rat, and the amount of aspartame and food dyes that they're feeding them in these studies, I think that the research translated that like one human Diet Cokes would have to drink like 128 cans in a day to reach, and like every day, to reach that outcome that the rats had. So just whenever we're thinking of those things that, oh, these headlines of this is bad for you, this is bad for you, watch out for this, we really just want to be a little bit more informed and a little bit more skeptical and say, well, what is the research saying, and what is it basing it off of? As far as athletes, truly the gluten-free, the dairy-free, those types of eliminating food groups that aren't necessarily medically needed is something I've seen a lot in athletes. Low carbohydrate diets and really prioritizing the high protein. What we don't always catch is, like I said earlier, our body really likes carbohydrates as its fuel source and its preferred fuel source. So if we're not giving our body what it wants in carbohydrates, it's going to have to start making glucose out of those proteins. So whenever we're recovering nutrition and we're eating all this protein, instead of that going to the muscles like we want it to help build it up and strengthen it, it's actually going to be turned into carbohydrates to then be stored as energy in that form.
Got it. What would be a superfood or superfoods for tournaments or post tournament food? What would be something that you would serve as a mom?
Yeah, so we have to first dissect the term superfood. Unfortunately, there is no one food that's going to significantly impact our health or be so much better than something else. It's actually more of like a marketing term. So if you see that marketed anywhere as this is a superfood or a super supplement or anything like that, just be a little bit weary and kind of, like we said, have a little bit of curiosity, questioning it instead of just kind of consuming that. Obviously fruits and vegetables, and it's hard to get those in kids this age range. But I think whenever we think of fruits and vegetables, we think of them as you have to eat maybe like raw or cooked with like no flavoring or no fun things. If your kid wants broccoli, but they only want it covered in ranch, that's okay. That ranch isn't gonna, it's not going to take away those nutrients that the broccoli has in it. And there's a lot of beneficial vitamins in that broccoli that need fat to absorb better and quicker. So that ranch dressing or the cheese on the, cooked vegetables, things like that, is actually going to be a little bit beneficial. And it's a good way for athletes to get those calorie needs met through condiments and adding little things like that.
Gotcha. What, as far as water intake goes, the myth of 8 glasses a day.
Yeah.
Again, like you had said, everybody's different. For some people, it might be 1. For some people, it might be 12, right?
Yeah.
But at tournaments now, almost every single athlete has, as you showed us earlier, a giant water bottle next to them. Yeah, is there? Should they be drinking 1? Should they be drinking just when they're thirsty? There's the myth, of course. Well, if you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, definitely. If you are thirsty, you are kind of already showing those dehydration like symptoms and performance indicators that aren't great. So a good one to kind of determine your hydration status is to look at your pee. So I wish I had like the chart in here, but if our pee is super clear, almost like it's coming straight from our water bottle, we might be overhydrating. And that goes all the way down all the shades of yellow that you can get to where the bottom looks more like apple juice or is orange or a really dark yellow. That means you're dehydrated. So what we want to look for whenever we're talking about hydration in athletes is more of like a lemonade color, not too yellow, but still has a little bit of yellow to it. It's not so clear. That's always a good indicator that you might be, getting enough water to be hydrated. But then also we want to look at how sweaty that athlete is, because what we lose in sweat, sodium, potassium, magnesium, if we're only drinking water, those aren't getting replaced, okay? So we do run the risk of like getting cramps, getting fatigued, those types of things, which is where those sports drinks can come into play, or eating salty foods like pretzels on the sideline.
Perfect. We are about out of time. Taylor, I want to thank you so much from the Arizona region. We appreciate all the information. And the attendees know, and like I said, we're going to record this and post this, but if they have questions, they know now where to reach you and how to contact you. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up?
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed, connecting with you offline. And if you do follow me on Instagram after this presentation, please send me a message and let me know like, hey, I watched you from the Arizona region. I love connecting with my followers in that way. Like, how'd they find my page? How are they connecting with me? And then if they have any specific questions, like related to fueling, hydration, body image, my DMs are always open.
Perfect. I want to thank all the attendees for joining us. We appreciate it very much. Taylor, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, have a good evening.
Bye.